I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. The time is 5:32.
The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 6:43. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during matters from the floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at this time. And finally, I would like to remind all of us that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Next item.
5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Tejada Middle School, John Bajesco.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. My name is John Bajesco, principal of Tejada Middle School. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce two outstanding students and their families who are with us this evening. Giving this evening's invocation is Miss Rachel Morse. Rachel is an example of why our district has been named to College Board's 5th annual AP District Honor Roll. She is a straight-A student in the Gifted and Talented program and is taking pre-AP courses in all core content areas. Rachel excels in athletics and extracurricular activities as well, and she is an exemplary leader and role model among her peers. This evening, Rachel is accompanied by her family, her parents, Bob and Sheila, her brothers, Luke, who is a 5th grader at Encino Park, and Caden. Leading us in the pledge to the United States flag is another outstanding student, Donovan Sanders. I knew Donovan was a leader when on the very first day of school, he walked up to me, firmly shook my hand, and introduced himself in such a confident and professional manner. Donovan excels in his classwork as well as in extracurricular activities and athletics. His teachers and coaches describe him as an encourager who is always courteous, professional, respectful, and optimistic. Donovan is accompanied by his family this evening. His mother, Tanya Barnes, his brother Kai, who is a 2nd grader at Encino Park, and his aunt, Emily Barrera. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for our invocation, followed by the pledge to the United States flag.
Dear Heavenly Father, today we thank you for all of our blessings, for the successful outcomes of recent school events, and for all the staff members of this district. These men and women play key roles in the success of the Northeast Independent School District. Today, I ask that you are with them as they discuss, plan, and make a difference in the lives of every student. Please guide their hearts, minds, and souls toward another successful meeting. Grant us the humility to always seek goodwill in all that we say and do. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Pledge to the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you, students. If you'd like to come up here in front of the dais, and Mrs. Grona will present you with some certificates, and we'll take some pictures. And congratulations to both of you. We're so happy you're here. Yes, and please. Thank you to all of you and to the families. We're so happy that you're part of our school district, and I'm sure you're very proud of your children. They're lovely, both of them. Yes, oh, you're welcome to leave, you're welcome to stay. It might be more fun to leave, but whatever you want.
Rachel's mother used to be a principal in our school district.
Oh, wonderful. Well done. Yeah. No. She said it's okay. Thank you all for coming. Next item.
6 recognitions. A, Asthma Friendly Schools Initiative.
And this is Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President,
Yes.
members of the board, executive staff, Dr. Gottardy, and guests, I'd like to call Diane Rhodes, our Assistant Director of Asthma Education Health Services, to announce some good news that's befallen our school district. So take it away, Diane.
Thank you. Good evening. President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. We are here tonight to recognize 7 NEISD schools that were awarded the American Lung Association's Asthma Friendly Schools Initiative Champion Gold Award. Castle Hills, Colonial Hills, Almas, and Thousand Oaks Elementaries, Garner and Wood Middle School, and Robert E. Lee High School. To achieve the level of gold status, the winning school must meet all 20 components within the 4 strategies of the Asthma Friendly Schools Initiatives, which includes maximizing school health services, building asthma education, providing healthy learning environments, and managing physical education and activity. Additionally, as was the case last year, these 7 schools are the only schools in the entire nation to receive this honor. Wow. They join El Dorado, Camelot, and Larkspur in the gold level.
That's great.
This honor requires a coordinated effort from the principal, school nurse, PE teacher, custodian, facility staff, family specialists, leadership team, teachers, and parents, all working together to improve the quality of life for their students with asthma, which can be as high as 17% of their student population. At this time, I would like to introduce the American Lung Association representatives from the Southwest region to come forward to present the banners to our 7 gold campuses. Neil Parker, Development Director, and Angie McClure, Executive Director of San Antonio and Austin.
Oh, great.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. Angie and I are honored to be here tonight to present these banners to the 7 schools that have received the AFSI award. We'd like to thank everybody in these schools and NEISD for raising awareness regarding asthma, allergies, and all aspects of clean, healthy air in your schools. In particular, we'd like to recognize Diane Rhodes as a board volunteer, a member of the American Lung Association here in San Antonio, for her work and dedication and submitting all of the schools for the AFSI award. I'd like to reiterate that the 7 schools are the only 7 schools that have won the gold award, and for the first time ever, that is a middle and a high school. So it's you really are on the cutting edge of everything that you're doing out there. So we would really like to congratulate you and just everybody should be very proud of these accomplishments. We'd like to go ahead and present some of the banners in order. First of all, it's going to be Thousand Oaks. So if people could come up and we could get the picture, that would be wonderful. Then we have Olmus Elementary School. Robert E. Lee High School. Grona Middle School. Colonial Hills Elementary. Castle Hill Elementary. And then Wood Middle School.
Well, congratulations to everyone, and we really appreciate all your efforts. It helps keeps kids in school. They're not absent thanks to what all of you do, and that really helps all of us, and it really helps them, most importantly. So congratulations and thank you again. Next item.
7, new business for possible board action. A, instruction. 1, possible action regarding Reagan and Johnson High School boundaries.
And I believe this will go to Mr. Latta? Correct. Okay.
Madam President, board members, ladies and gentlemen, I asked Mr. Michael R., our Executive Director for Research and Technology Services, to go over this boundary presentation and recommendation.
Okay.
Mike?
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. We're going to talk a little bit about Reagan-Johnson boundary today. I'm going to wait for Vic to...
Go against the crowd.
Thank you, Vic. As a reminder, last school year, we had a number of meetings to discuss the opening of Hill Middle School and preparing a boundary. We started it off by having an executive board luncheon discussion. In the fall, we had a number of public hearings. Of course, we came to the Board of Trustees in December, and they were effective this beginning of this school year. And what we learned from the PTA at that time is there was a desire to improve that middle school feeder pattern. And before Hill Middle School actually opened, 25% of Bush Middle School students attended Johnson, and 75% attended Reagan. Today, after the boundary, 5% of Bush's attendance area attends Johnson, and 95% attends Reagan High School. So we began this process of looking at the Reagan-Johnson boundary the same way we did with the middle schools, and that is that we had a lunch forum in October. At that time, we had an informal meeting. We didn't discuss any real scenarios, although we looked at what we had already had presented before. And they did agree that the proposal itself was reasonable, and it's a way for us, before we go out to the general public, to get a feel of should we change anything, should we look at any other options, including things like the grandfather. And they thought it was a good starting point for us. So we had a public hearing, and here we are today to see if we can approve a new boundary. Of course, just like the case of Hill, we had a number of meetings, and every meeting we have, we make sure that we actually record and categorize every category. You should have already received a PDF document with all of the documents, with all of the comments as it relates to this Reagan-Johnson boundary. And that includes, of course, everything from the PTA to the public meetings, as well as anything sent by email. Of course, there are some limitations. We do our absolute best to interpret them, but sometimes we can't quite make out what's in the microphone too, so we do our absolute best on that. So just to give you a quick summary on that, out of 32 comments that we received regarding the Reagan-Johnson boundary, we had 3 of them related to capacity and staffing concerns. We had 7 of them talking about general boundary changes. 18 has quite a bit of discussion related to the grandfather clause. And then we had 4 general comments. And I'm sure you've already gone through 18, or all 32, I know you have. So let's take a look at the 2014 boundaries as approved in terms of the middle schools first. Hill, as you recall, took pretty much everything east of Bulverde Road, as well as the Yates property and Emerald Forest. Tejeda was expanded to the west side of 281. And now what I'm doing here is I'm superimposing the Johnson-Reagan boundary. What you see here in red outlines the differences between Johnson on the east side, for the most part, and on the west side, of course, is Reagan. And the area we're going to talk about tonight is this small piece here, which is literally right next to Bush Middle School. And we're going to be proposing that the boundary move just slightly north of the existing boundary. So we're going to move it, we're proposing to move it from this area to this. And let me give you a detailed map of that. So this is the proposed, this is what we're looking at, and there's 4 neighborhoods that are affected by this boundary change. You have the Village in the hills, the village on the Glen, Saddle Mountain, and village of Cactus Bluff. And what we are proposing is that those areas, and all of these areas here, by the way, have direct access to Evans Road. That is the main reason why we're here today. And by moving this group, then, the group in the area in yellow, as we move them to Reagan, we will be able to achieve a 100% feed. And the remaining area of Tejeda will be a 100% feed to Johnson. So when we look at the counts of how many students live there in the area, and these are the 4 areas, the Village in the Hills, the Glen, Saddle Mountain, and Cactus Bluff, currently we have 121 high school students living in those areas today. Out of that 121, 1.7% attend Lee today. Same thing at Roosevelt. 20% already go to Reagan because last year we gave options for kids to start declaring Reagan as an option. And 76% actually attend Johnson right now. That's out of the 121 high school students. When you look at long-range forecast as well as the current enrollment, what we see here first is Johnson. On the x-axis is the year. It goes out to 2019. It's a 5-year window. On the y-axis, you have the student enrollment counts. The red line indicates Johnson, and today's enrollment for Johnson is just under 3,000. And they're forecasted to continue to grow just like the blue line, which is Reagan. What you see here, there's 2, green and blue and green and red. The green and the red represents the capacity at Johnson, and the green and the blue represents the capacity, which includes the portables, at Reagan. So over time, if we make this move, and let's assume for now that 121 all move at once, and we know that's not going to happen because of a potential grandfather clause. If that were to occur, then Reagan would move from this blue line, or this dot, all the way up here, but we know that's not going to happen all at once. They will gradually, over the course of several years, reach this dotted line, and conversely, Johnson will decrease by 121 over time, depending on the grandfather, depending on how many people take advantage of that. And then in the case of Reagan, currently there's a construction project, and after the end of this year, the capacity, the portables will be empty there, and that'll put the capacity well over 4,100 at Reagan. Just a reminder, Reagan's peak enrollment back in 2006 was right at 3,600. So we feel pretty good about this change, and that in a 5-year window, we think they can more than manage it. So once again, in terms of the feeder percentages, the current enrollment is 95% attends Reagan from Bush, 5% attends Johnson. This proposal will take it 100% to Reagan. Now we talk about the grandfather clause. I'm going to read this to make sure I do this right. So 6th through 8th grade students living in the affected areas, and there's 4 neighborhoods, who are currently enrolled in the 14-15 school year will have the option to declare either Reagan or Johnson as their home high school during their 8th grade school year. That is for grades 6 through 8. 9th through 12th grade students affected by the boundary change who are currently enrolled at Johnson will have a one-time option during an established window of time to declare either Reagan or Johnson as their home high school campus for their remaining high school years. So this covers grades 6 through 12. If the family of a grandfather student has a younger sibling, PK through 5, the sibling will not qualify for a grandfather and must attend the high school zone for the family's residence. I know that in the past, we typically have really only provided a grandfather clause to 8th graders going to the high school as an option. And siblings were for 1 year and 1 year only, no transportation. That has been pretty typical for many, many, many years. Last year, we only extended the grandfather to current 7th graders. This proposal, I'm going to back up one slide, is taking it and being a little bit more liberal, saying, you know what, if you're 6 through 8, you have a choice. And of course, 9 through 12, well, they just have to declare. That was the same thing that we talked about last year. So if this proposal is approved, students opting to attend Johnson High School from the affected areas will not receive transportation to Johnson High School. Busing services to Reagan High School will be based just like everywhere else. It's based upon 2 or more miles or hazardous route. So at this time, the superintendent recommends rezoning high school boundaries between Reagan and Johnson with the grandfather clause as presented. And before we go to questions, anytime we do boundaries, we have a number of experts. And I have to tell you, I want to publicly thank, starting at the back, Pupil Personnel Services, Ann McNabb, and Christy Wilbur. You can give a, there you go. And we have Transportation, Mr. Anderson, and Jack DeForest. Thank you. Construction Management, Mr. Sullivan, always there. And Communication, Aubrey. Thank you. And I have Jeff Kurth back here as well with Dorian Galindo and Aaron Stuckey. They're always there. It takes a team, and I really am fortunate to work with such an incredible team. So at this time, definitely open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lotta.
Sure.
Any questions for Mr. Lotta? I have a question. It's somewhat rhetorical, but I think it's important.
Sure.
So how accurate has your department been in the past with your projections?
Under a 5-year window, I'm going to do this from memory.
And I know you've given us this number before.
Sure. I think the 5-year boundary, I'm going to say, is a 3.7% in terms of a 5-year window. The further out you go, of course, it's going to
Right.
it's become a little bit more difficult to predict. And I don't remember the 10%. Jeff, do you remember that 10% rate right offhand? I'm going to.
I guess maybe what I'm asking is, because, and I can remember your predecessor giving us this number, like, when he would predict, and he's predicting it based on a very, to me, a very elaborate model, lots of people to help,
There's-
lots of good input.
Absolutely.
Something like 99%.
On a year-to-year
You're spot
basis,
on with your
absolutely.
numbers.
On a year-to-year basis, we're about 99.5.
That's really what
Absolutely,
I'm
on a
asking.
year-to-year. But, you know, of course, as you take it out further and further,
Understood.
there are several things that we're now faced with, everything from charter schools to new development and how much are they going to actually, their houses will go for. The higher they are, the less likely you'll have a kid.
So the point is being that this is not hypothetical.
No,
It's
no, we're-
very, and that's what I want to drive home,
Sure.
because sometimes numbers are questioned.
Sure.
And I know what your track record is, but I want
Thank you.
all of us to know what your track record is.
Thank you.
And I guess my second question is to Dr. Gottardy, and, you know, we've been around a while, some of us. And I appreciate your consideration for a very liberal grandfather clause. And maybe you'd like to weigh in on some of what prompted you or propelled you to extend it, because honestly, no good deed goes unpunished, and I'm impressed with what you did.
Well, thank you very much for that. I can tell you that in years past, and I'm talking about probably the last 20 years, anytime we've done a high school boundary change, Mike is spot on. We've always done current 8th graders and above. But as we went to the communities, and remember how this has all unfolded. We've been talking about this particular boundary change for 1 year. We actually went to the communities back when we were rezoning the 4 middle schools north of 1604 last year. And Mike was right. The PTAs overwhelmingly came to us and said, what about a 100% feeder pattern? With only 5% of the kids going from those 4 subdivisions to Johnson High School, that is a difficult thing. We often get that criticism in other parts of the district about having such a low number attending one campus. So the idea being that these particular 4 subdivisions who have been attending Johnson High School since Johnson opened, and the fact that none of us, I don't know how many parents are out there, how many community members are out there, but I can tell you that all the people that Mike showed on that last slide, none of us enjoy going to the communities and changing boundaries. It is one of the most difficult things that we do in the school district, period. So the idea being in this situation that we would grandfather 8th graders and above, I just felt like let's look at how we can do it even more than that. And honestly, Mike's right. When we went to the communities last year, we told everybody current 7th and 8th graders. So we backed off with just the 8th graders and went to 7th and 8th graders. And a month or so ago, I told the staff, okay, every 6th grader that's at Bush Middle School right now who thinks they're going to Johnson, let's take a look at how we can include an even more liberal grandfather clause. Now, I have to tell you this. After we're done tonight, this whole idea of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade grandfathering is going to fall to Miss Ann McNabb and her department to keep track of. We're all going to get to kind of escape from the everyday running of that decision, but I have to applaud her and her staff for being very cooperative with me on this particular recommendation. So I thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Bresnahan. I think it's the right thing to do for the communities. I had actually, for a little while, thought about maybe even going to the 5th grade. And after giving it much thought, the obvious cutoff line is between 5th and 6th grade. It's the 6th graders. So therefore, that's the grandfather clause that we bring to you tonight. And I too appreciate all the work that the staff did on this particular boundary recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gottardy. Any additional questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adopt new high school boundaries as recommended by the superintendent?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hughey. Any additional discussions? Do all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lotta. Next item.
2, possible action regarding Encino Park and Bulverde Creek boundaries.
And I believe this is Mr. Lotta once again. Yeah.
We're going to talk a little bit about Bulverde Creek and Encino Park boundary, but specifically we're going to talk about something called the YATES tract. And let me orient everyone to this map. On the lower area of this map is 1604. Then you have 281 running in a south-north direction. You got Evans Road here, and Evans Road divides Cibolo Green and Bulverde Creek. Bulverde Creek is all in green, Encino Park is in brown, Roan Forest is in purple. That's the area that we're going to be really working with, and I'm going to superimpose 2 middle school boundaries, Tejeda as well as Hill. And then from there, I'm also going to highlight the YATES tract, which is what we're going to talk about today. Now, currently the YATES tract, you can tell, it is currently zoned to Hill Middle School, but because it's brown, it's currently zoned to Encino Park. So we had a chance to meet with the developers last year, and there's been a number of documents submitted to the City of San Antonio. Specifically, it's called an MPCD, which is a Master Planned Community District. And in there, they really declare more or less the use of what they're going to do for the property. We do know a few things. Currently, there are no NEISD students in this tract. We also know that there are 800 acres, of which 390 acres, which is this area back here to the left. By the way, this is Bulverde Road, coming along here in 1604, is still toward the bottom here. And we know there's 225 acres, which is the green area that's going to be developed as multifamily. And we also know there's 103 acres being proposed for commercial. We also know that, of course, there is a floodplain running south-north of that, and it'll be maintained. And there are major thoroughfares. And what you see here in gold, toward the bottom, is the extension of Gold Canyon. And then there's going to be another road that will connect all the way out to Canyon Parkway. But both of them, the major access is going to be right off of Bulverde Road. So when you think about this and look at those main access points, if a student currently lives anywhere here, and by the way, this is going to take some time to develop. It's not going to develop overnight. But the one thing we're trying to be proactive about, and that is if we actually leave it alone, then the student would have to travel literally up Bulverde Road to Evans, all the way across in the backside of Encino, or they could always go across Gold Canyon all the way to 281 and reach Encino. But all this time, they're almost right next to Bulverde Creek. So we are proposing that we move that section from Encino to Bulverde Creek. And currently, just as a reminder, they already attend Hill Middle School. Makes sense. They live right in front of there. Yeah. Bulverde Creek is right here. And the white arrows, by the way, represent the main access points that the developer has identified for us. Now, when you look at the long-term forecast for Bulverde Creek, once again on the x-axis, it takes you out to a 5-year window to 2019. On the y-axis, the number of students. The blue represents enrollment over time. And so what you see in red is the permanent capacity, and the orange is the total capacity with portables. And then the green represents the core. Mr. Sullivan has done an analysis and determined we could add extra portables if we have to. And the portables would take us to about a little over 1,300 or closer to the core, which should hold us out around 18, 19. And at that point, we're going to look at different options for either boundary or building a new school. There's all these options we can look into. Encino Park. Encino Park has a pretty stable boundary where they're at today. They're about 650 and will pretty much stay that way for some time. Well under the permanent capacity, which is represented by the red. And then the orange, of course, is the portables that are in place. So we'll have extra capacity there to deal with it. And the core, of course, is pretty large, near 1,300. So the recommendation is the inclusion of the Yates track within the Bulverde Creek Elementary School attendance zone. Can I answer any questions?
Do we have any questions?
One.
Yes, Mrs. Hughey.
Do you have any idea of when or if the Yates estate will develop?
The developers told us it's going to take some time because currently there's no infrastructure there. And so they really told us it's going to take time. They're going to start first with a multifamily, and they said it's going to be very expensive. And I want to remind everyone, when we talked about the mansions apartment complex, which is located right next to Johnson, I had to think about that for a second, to Johnson, there's only 21 students that live in that area because in that apartment complex because of the cost. And anything that typically is pretty expensive does not generate the number of students that Bulverde Village, Ventanas would generate. So it's going to take time, and even that we're going to keep a close eye as far as how expensive the housing is, which will also help us do a better job in predicting.
Okay.
Does
Thank
that
you.
mean like 3 years, 5 years?
Oh, they said 10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
Thanks. Yeah, that gives us a better idea.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Dr. Gottardy.
Ms. President and board members, I just want to make two points. Mike hit on this very well. Just to emphasize again, there are no students, there are no homes whatsoever in this 800-acre tract. And I have to tell you, this is absolutely the easiest boundary recommendation we've ever made to the Board of Trustees because it doesn't impact anyone. And then number two, in a picture-perfect world, in a perfect world, this is exactly what you'd want to do. You'd want to rezone an area before kids are actually living there. So we feel very good about this recommendation.
I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gottardy. Do I have a motion? Anyone?
I move to approve the boundaries as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughey. Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Any additional questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Lana.
you.
Pardon? Yeah, no, yes, thank you, Mike. Next item.
8, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments.
Do I have a motion to approve the hiring of new personnel as presented in executive session?
I move that we approve personnel as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins and Mrs. Wolff. There can be no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item.
2, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 continuing contract employee.
And we have no action. Next item.
3, executive director of athletics.
So who would like to make this motion?
I move that we approve the director of athletics as presented in executive session.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughey. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Mrs. Wolff. There can be no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item.
4, principal of Redland Oaks Elementary.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the principal of Redland Oaks Elementary as presented in executive session.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughey. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. There can be no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Dr. Gottardy, we have some great introductions tonight.
I sure do. I'm pretty excited about them, Madam President, board members, ladies and gentlemen. When I became the superintendent close to 4 years ago, I knew at some point we were probably going to have to replace the executive director of athletics. I just was not looking forward to doing it whatsoever. Obviously, Mr. Comelander has told us that he is going to retire effective January 31st of 2015. And it is my honor and my privilege to announce to the audience this evening, that we have a new executive director for athletics, Mrs. Karen Funk. Karen joined the Northeast family in 1986. Prior to being named Executive Director for Athletics, she was the Director for Girls Athletics and Assistant Athletic Director at Blossom Athletic Center. She also spent 14 years as a varsity volleyball coach at Madison High School. During her career, Ms. Funk has received dozens of awards, including being named to the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association Hall of Honor, being named Athletic Director of the Year by the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association, and being recognized as a Coach of the Year by the Express News. Ms. Funk received her bachelor's degree in physical education from the University of Texas at Arlington in 1979. She also earned her master's degree in educational administration from Texas A&M University at Kingsville in 1996. Ms. Funk has a total of 35 years in education. Karen, congratulations. Thank you so much. We also have a new principal of Redland Oaks Elementary School, Ms. Shawn Hayden. Shawn joined the Northeast family in 2006. Prior to being named principal at Redland Oaks Elementary, she was an assistant principal at Tuscany Heights Elementary School. Ms. Hayden received her bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies from the University of North Texas in 1992. She also earned her master's degree in education from Concordia University in 2009. Ms. Hayden has a total of 20 years in education. Congratulations, Shawn. Glad to have you.
Well, we are delighted, Mrs. Funk, I'll address you first. This entire board is so delighted that you will be taking over as the director. And I know you know this, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Your reach is so great, and you hit so many lives with the job that you do, and it is such a jewel in our district. It really is. And I think about me my kids are all gone. I take my parents to games. It fills the weekend. There are things for us to do. So you go from the youngest to the oldest. And it's such an enhancement to our community. I can't stress that enough, not to mention what it does to our students and the possibilities and the opportunities it gives to our kids. So we are thrilled, and we know you're just going to take it to the fabulous heights. So congratulations. We're really excited that you represent us as a school district, and also to Mrs. Hayden and your families are all here. It's so neat. Congratulations to you, and as an elementary school principal, you also have such an impact and an influence on our families and on the kids, and on just, you're a leader, and we really appreciate that. Yes,
Ms.
go ahead.
President, if it's okay, I'd like for them to introduce the family members
absolutely.
that are with them here tonight.
It's
Karen?
such a thrill.
Let me do this. This has been my family member. It was somewhere about midnight, so I would like to say I'm his other wife, but his real one isn't here. So
The work wife.
I owe everything to him, so I'm so appreciative.
We
But
agree.
now I'll introduce my real husband. The one I do go home to. And my mother came with me, Patricia Wolff.
Wonderful.
My big sister went to Churchill High School, and Eisenhower Middle School, so we are Northeast.
Yes. Wonderful.
Okay, I have half of my family here tonight, starting
Better half. Biggest fan. And my daughter is in Dallas and she's teaching 7th grade English. Oh, that's so great. Well, good. Well, we're glad that the rest are here. The latest mentor, you know Tara Bailey. Yes. Little Tuscany. She's here. Well, thank you for being a mentor and one of our principals. Congratulations. Well, we're glad you're here and you're free to leave, free to go, whatever you like to do. Congratulations again.
So exciting.
No, no.
What did he say?
That was nice. Well, we'll continue as people are leaving. Do we, next item, Mrs.
B, possible action on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072.
We have no action.
C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071. 1, possible and pending litigation.
No action.
9, comments from individual board members. A, state board rule on board member continuing education announcement of credit.
And this is for me. So annually, at the last regular board meeting of the calendar year, the current school board president of each local board of trustees shall announce the name of each board member who has completed the required continuing education requirements for school board members, who have exceeded the required hours, and who, if any, are deficient. Completing the annual required continuing education is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member under the State Board of Education. So we would like for the minutes to reflect that the following board members have exceeded the required continuing education hours. Myself, Shannon, Grona, Sandi, Hughey, Brigitte, Perkins, Ed, White, Jim Wheat, and Sandy Wolff. Thank you, all of you, for your hard work and being such students. And there is no action required here. Next item is
10, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding EIC local, first reading.
Ms. Culpepper. Sure.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. With the passage of House Bill 5, beginning with students who entered high school in 2014-15, the name of the graduation program changed, as well as course requirements. EIC Legal, Academic Achievement Class Ranking, reflected these changes and was approved by the NEISD School Board. Class rank is calculated using the requirements of the graduation program. The Division of Instruction reviewed EIC Local, Academic Achievement Class Ranking. The adjustments we have proposed are delete sections applicable to students who have previously graduated. Correspondence courses are currently included in rank calculation for all high school students. Students who entered high school beginning in 2014-15 will be on the Foundation High School Program Distinguished Level of Achievement, not on the recommended high school program. Evening night school classes are currently excluded from the calculation of class rank. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve and adopt the first reading of the proposed board policy EIC Local. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Culpepper? Mr. White?
No, I was going to move that we accept the first reading as presented.
Thank you, Mr. White. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Do we have any additional questions? Thank you, Ms. Culpepper. Seeing none, do I have a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item.
2, possible action regarding board policy CKE local, first reading.
Mr. Clary?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, and guests, this is the second and final reading of Board Policy GE Local.
CK.
I'm sorry, CK. Chief McCampbell is here to address questions regarding this policy, and it's updating the policy regarding our Northeast Police Department. This is first reading.
Yes, first reading. Thank you. Do we have questions for Chief McCampbell, for Mr. Clary on the first reading? Give Ms.
Why was
Chief-
this change necessary? I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I was just curious as to the difference in the reasons for the difference in the phrasings.
What we did was taking the recommendation from TASB to include, in the main ones are the Department Regulations Manual, racial profiling, the use of force in the high-speed pursuit, to be addressed within the policy and also within the manual that's being prepared for the department.
Okay. And I think I found one typo too that I'll share with you later. That's no big deal. As I read through these, like I said, I have no problem. I think everything is so well defined and well described and everything. But I did have one question in light of recent events. Has the district thought about or looked at or discussed cameras for our police officers? I know there's a big expense. It was just a curious question.
No, we internally not yet have really, I mean, we've done some research into it. When I came from the city, that was something that was being looked at that time before I left. Obviously, as we all know, with the recent events, President Obama is actually considering, I think, to make federal funds available for all law enforcement to provide the cameras. And depending on what the outcome of that is, one consideration that I know the city was having problem is setting up a policy of when to activate the cameras for usage. And the main problem that they were having is the downloading and storage of all that video and where it was going to be kept and how they were going to do it over a time period. You know, you're talking, they were ranging anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour just to download the video from the cameras in the car. So if you add the body cameras on all the officers, it would take it to the next. And most of it was bandwidth and speed as far as the download and what type of downloading they were doing. But obviously, you know, my concern, not a concern, but my opinion of all this is I think the body cameras would only do good for the officer to kind of show, you know, that it's not as bad out there as everybody makes it seem to be. And it's a security blanket, not only for the officers, but for the district, you know, to show that we are in compliance and doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Well, like I said, I really, all the wording and everything just seemed was just great. And knowing as many of our police force as I do, I think so highly of them. You too, Chief. Even.
Thank you.
But there's such a great group of people, and they've done such a wonderful job for this district.
I've had nothing but positive feedback from everybody since the year that I've been here, so it's really appreciated.
I'm very grateful that for the care and security that they provide us. So
thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for Chief? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve and adopt the first reading of the proposed board policy CKE local?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughey. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
3, possible action regarding change to board policy GE local, second and final reading.
Mr. Clary?
I apologize, Madam President.
That's okay.
This is the second and final reading of Board Policy GE Local that addresses the district's relationship with parent-teacher organizations, booster clubs, alumni chapters, and educational foundations pertaining to donations for capital improvements and infrastructure projects.
Thank you, Mr. Clary. Do we have any questions for Mr. Clary? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the second and final reading of the proposed board policy GE local?
So move.
Thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Wolff. Thank you, Mr. White. Additional questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clary. Next item?
B, Campus Administration and Human Resources. 1, possible action regarding approval of PDAS appraisers.
Dr. Newman?
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gottardy, executive staff, and guests. The listed appraiser has met all of the established requirements to be a certified appraiser, and we're asking that the board approve the administrator listed as a certified PDAS appraiser.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Any questions for Dr. Newman? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the administrators listed as a certified PDAS appraiser?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Mrs. Wolff? Additional questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item?
C, Consent. 1, Business Services. A, Tax roll approval. B, Bid items. 2, Operations. A, easements for drainage, streets, utilities, and various service agreements to support construction of the district's 2011 bond program project at Camelot Elementary School. B, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting both the 2011 bond and district M&O programs, design and construction requirements. 3, minutes from November 2014. 4, end of consent.
Thank you, Mrs. Hughey. Are there board members wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mrs. Wolff?
One moment.
I suspected you might. Okay, take your time.
At the first reading, I thought I was okay. I just want to double check, make sure
that's
there's no
fine.
water in here.
I didn't see any myself.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, but I looked also.
It was mostly gas lines. And, right?
Yes.
CPS. Okay, I'm
I
good.
was watching too for you.
Thank you.
You're right.
Yes, we're all, now we've become very aware of water.
I appreciate y'all. I
And not just
appreciate it.
conserving
Thank
water,
you.
Mrs. Wolff.
That too.
Got your back.
I
I'm good.
almost reported my son to your group. because
You
he
can do
takes
it
very long
anonymously, so it's
showers.
okay. Oh,
No, I'm reporting you.
Madam Chair, I move that we
Thank you.
approve consent as presented.
Thank you, Mr. White. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wheat. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item.
11, reports. A, financial statement, review of expenditures.
Which we have been provided.
12, matters from the floor.
Before we go to the matters from the floor, I need to read this. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 5 minutes, but are not permitted to make, first of all, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised during the district's grievance policies. 2, a personnel action. 3, a student disciplinary matter. 4, a complaint about a particular student. 5, pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time from either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Mrs. Hughey?
Tom Cummins. Oh. All right. We have no one.
Thank you. Next item.
13, board member requests for items to be placed on next month's agenda.
Are there board members with requests? Thank you. Next item.
14, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for reports from the administration.
No action.
15, here's an early Christmas present, adjournment.
7:42. Thank you all for coming. That was an early Christmas present.